Hi everyone, welcome to our online hangout space. #chat up, real talk, real impact. Brought to you by Quarantalk Media and supported by the United States Embassy in the Philippines. I am your host, Germaine Jalandoni de Ruña, and as usual, here on Chat Up, we bring you enriching conversations about current affairs and various advocacies. Join our chat, keep your messages and questions coming, and share this live stream using our official hashtags #chat up and #real talk real impact. Let's now dive into today's discussion and find out what's up.
A United States education is your gateway
to a great American campus experience,
to study in a country of innovators and entrepreneurs,
to use your curiosity wisely,
to take on challenges,
to think differently,
to have endless opportunities,
to hear new perspectives,
to navigate cultural differences,
to pursue your passions,
to gain real-world experiences,
to learn skills for a changing job market,
to put theory into practice,
to become the kind of professional you want to be,
to thrive in your career,
to give back to your community and to the world,
to be the kind of person that you wouldn't have dreamed to be otherwise.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study in the United States.
The United Nations declared this day, January 24th, as International Day of Education, with the theme, Changing Course, Transforming Education. UNESCO highlights the need to rebalance people's relationship with nature, technology, and with one another in order to transform our future as we face the pandemic. In today's episode, we will talk about the best practices in overcoming learning loss in the so-called new normal. We'll talk about the needed transformations or strategies to meet everyone's right to education and build a sustainable and inclusive future considering our current context with the ongoing pandemic. So stay with us for the rest of the hour, and if you have comments or questions for our guests, send them in through the comment section of our live stream. So for today, we have three esteemed guests joining us for this discussion. First up, let us all welcome the Director of Global Institute at the California State Polytechnic University in Pomona, Dr. Lisa Xue.
Hi, good morning. Greetings from California State Polytechnic University, Pomona. And the university is also known as Cal Poly Pomona. It is one of the 23 universities in the California State University system. And we are also one of the 7 polytechnic universities in the United States. The campus is located in the greater Los Angeles in Southern California, which is about 45 minutes away from the Los Angeles airport. And I warmly welcome all of you to visit our beautiful campus when the pandemic is under control.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. And hopefully, we can visit your beautiful campus real soon. And hopefully this pandemic will end real soon. Thank you again, Dr. Lisa. And also joining us today is the Senior Director of Intensive English and Global Learning of the Texas International Education Consortium. We have Dr. Heather Farmakis.
Here on International Day of Education. I appreciate the invitation. I'm the Chief Program Officer here at the Texas International Education Consortium. We call it TIC for short because that's a mouthful. We're a nonprofit consortium of Texas universities, both public and private, and we also do have affiliate international universities as part of our consortium. Our mission is to expand international education by facilitating and fostering lasting relationships between Texas and our partners around the world toward building educational access, economic opportunity, institutional capacity, and professional development for those we serve and include. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. And lastly, we have with us the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Open University, Dr. Melinda Dela Peña, Bandalaria.
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good day,
Morning.
everyone, I should say. And thank you for the opportunity to be part of this program on this very important day that we are observing, this International Day of Education. So, just to give a short context as well about my institution, I am from the University of the Philippines Open University, one of the constituent units of the only national university here in the Philippines. So, we're established as a fully distance education university. So, my views and my perspectives about remote instruction and what we're going through now are based on the context where I am in. And we are a fully online university since 2007. So online distance learning is something that is very familiar and something that we've been doing for many years now. So again, thank you, and hope we enjoy the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda, and thank you all to all of our guests are today. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special day of International Day of Education. So let's start with our discussion for this morning. We all know that we are in a pandemic, and a lot of people have been affected by this, different industries, and specifically education, the educational system. So with the school closures and mobility restrictions that has been happening because of the COVID-19 pandemic since the early 2020s, how would you describe the impact of learning loss from your observations and interactions that you've had with your peers and maybe with the students that you have also interacted? I will start the question with Dr. Lisa.
Hi, I think for sure, we have to admit there should be some loss. For example, when the pandemic, the outbreak of the pandemic, we line up 160 international students from mainland China to come to our campus for the leadership program. Within a week, we had to cancel the program because, first, it happened in China. But but I think we need to think about how to turn the challenges into new opportunities. I think we will discuss the kind of our strategies later, but the impact is huge because we suddenly moved from in-person education to distance education, and the students, educators, I think we were kind of at a loss at that time, because it had never happened before. I think I would just stop here and listen to our colleagues what they have to share.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. Definitely has been a trying time for all of the students and the educators as well. How about Dr. Heather?
Yes, it definitely has been, and I concur. And out of disruption, which was the COVID pandemic, we do have innovation that comes out quite frequently. And I had the pleasure of working directly with Education USA, U.S. Embassy Manila, and then, of course, the Commission of Higher Education in the Philippines to address this with 44 universities there. It was really quite an honor. We had to meet wonderful participants and faculty and administration among these universities, and navigate through each unique challenge given the geographic locations throughout the country. Some universities were more advanced, some were a little bit more behind, and how people were able to come together and just really realize, that we're all in this together, and this, we're going to make this happen, and just really approaching education differently with a different mindset, a different lens, as we say, and just thinking about how do you make this work? So we call it flexible learning. Key word is inflexible. What can you do given technology restrictions, accessibility to the internet, let alone if any students have any learning disabilities that would normally be addressed in a physical classroom environment. So those are all the things that we were trying to address within our program. So it's just an ongoing process, and that's just what we try to address here, married up with our Texas faculty here in the States. And we put on a program also in partnership with the Online Learning Consortium, which is a global authority for research-based best practices for online instruction and how you put that together. So yes, it's been challenging. It's been challenging even here in the United States in Texas, where we've been online for a long time, and we still were thrown for a loop with, oh my gosh, there's no students on campus. We have to send all the students home and student housing, and just not only navigating the learning aspect of it, but the logistics of what do we do? Where do these students going to go? What are we going to do with our day-to-day lives? How are we going to navigate around in the world? So I'm interested to hear what my other colleague says.
Thanks, Dr. Heather. Yeah, definitely this has been a disruption in all of our daily lives, and this we just have to adapt with the new normal. And I appreciate every one of you and all of our educators trying to navigate through this very trying time and make sure that our students will still continue learning and adapt to this. Thank you so much. And how about Dr. Melinda, in the case of the Philippines, what is the impact of learning loss here specifically in our institutions?
Yeah, definitely,
Go ahead.
definitely. There's that learning loss because first we're not prepared. We're not prepared to do this remote instruction. There was this sudden shift for this mode of instruction, and teachers, educators, schools were not prepared to undergo this kind of instructional delivery. And because of that, most course materials, most teaching strategies that our educators were used to, the things that they've been doing for so many years, suddenly all these things have to change. They had to change. And because of that, some of the things that needed to be learned, the knowledge, the skills that needed to be learned by our students, they could not be taught effectively in this mode of instruction. So definitely in the context alone, that our course materials, our course packages, and the teaching approaches and strategies were not appropriate to the mode of instruction that we suddenly had to do at the onset of the pandemic, then definitely that already accounted for the learning loss. And that we have seen some data, some figures already published by the World Bank, UNESCO, even UNICEF, quantifying in terms of cost of this learning loss and how much would it cost, especially among our students in our economy, this closure of schools. And until now, even if there were schools, there were universities who were able to do it in this remote mode of instruction, many schools are still grappling with how to do it effectively, how to do this kind of instruction effectively. And of course, they are waiting for that occasion wherein the teachers, our students could go back to school and resume the face-to-face instruction. Meanwhile, they have to contend with whatever is to the best of their ability and to the best of the facilities and logistics that they have at present. We also have to know or be aware that the most of the situation here in home situation here in the Philippines, they're not really that conducive to learning. I mean, especially when we are talking of poverty, exclusion, digital exclusion, conducive environment conducive to learning. Many of our learners could not have those things and could not participate effectively in this mode of instruction. Added to that, of course, we Filipinos, we are aware about the social aspect of learning. Something like when it comes to learning, we observe that it's best done when you are in group, you are with your friends, you are with your classmates, you interact with your fellow learners, and that somehow that contributes, that kind of interaction with your peers, with your fellow learners, somehow contribute to the kind of learning that that we can provide to our students, that the design of our education system provides to our students. So I guess we cannot deny that fact, and somehow we just have to do with what we have and design instructions so that we can continuously improve. And it's not just the pandemic that we have to contend with. We know that the Philippines, we have these different natural disasters, calamities, etc., that could really disrupt learning. Right. So we have to be prepared, and that's something that we have to think of as we move forward and prepare to what we call the next normal when it comes to education, so that we can really ensure that learning would continue for all and not just for a small sector of our students' population. So that's it from my end at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. I really like the point on the inclusivity, as well. How the students who are not really don't really have the access to education, and how people, specifically other students, how they learn. And sometimes our educational system is made in a way that interactions are really valued. And how would you be able to do that in the new normal? Maybe we can unpack that later in the strategies that your different institutions have been implementing in order to address that issue. Dr. Lisa, I have a question for you. Even with the challenges posed by the pandemic, it seems that your institution still managed to pursue partnerships and develop new programs, and as well as to continue with student recruitment. What would you say are the helpful strategies that high educational institutions may explore?
We all know that the global pandemic has changed the dynamics of international programs, international academic exchange activities. However, we just, cannot let the pandemic stop the international mobility or international programs. At Cal Poly Pomona, I think we quickly, worked out our strategy to cope with the challenge. So for talking about the Global Education Institute, we quickly changed our in-person leadership program to be online. Since March 2020, my team, we have delivered 19 cohorts of student innovation, entrepreneurship, and a leadership program to over 900 international students. So at the same time, we also built 20 new institutional partnership, developed 20 new international partnerships. And at the same time, we recruited international students from Denmark, France, Germany, Japan, Norway, Taiwan, and mainland China to our study semester at the CPP program. So actually, last week, these students are arrived on our campus. So we also, I'd like to share a piece of good news. During pandemic, many of the language institutions in the United States, were faced a close down, foreclosure because of the impact of the pandemic. However, at our university, we kept the accreditation. We keep the institution to be open. The good news is, as of this semester, we have had 12 students for the language program. So what I would like to share is just be innovative, be creative, be fearless. Yeah, so I just would like to share these few factors. I'm sure my colleague Heather has more to share with us.
Thank you, Dr. Lisa. I really like what you said. Be fearless and work around what has been happening in the world now, and create strategies, be creative, and like what you said again, be fearless. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. How about Dr. Heather? What's your experience like in ensuring continuity of learning, and what are the strategies that have helped you and your institution?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's like never-ending strategies, like everybody's talking about, just constantly thinking outside of the box, and really just responding and reimagining what education is. Not that traditional model that we've had. And, my colleagues here have talked about, we've thought about, okay, this was a big disruption for our faculty to deliver. It was a big disruption for our students to consume. It was a big disruption for our community to endure and continue to endure. And how do you plan for the unknown? When this all happened, it was like, oh, this will just be 2 weeks. And then it turned into 700 plus days later. And here we are still in the same situation. But I think if anything, the pandemic has taught us really to be creative, innovative, and still persevere. Yeah. So as far as, strategies that we do here to ensure continuity of learning is taking place is, a lot of collaboration among our partners, among our team, among our faculty, hearing everybody's ideas, of how do you go about doing things, and really having a meeting of the minds, bringing everybody together. We also had some opportunities for some wonderful partnerships during this time. One of them with the Online Learning Consortium, which is a global authority in online instruction. So we partnered with them early on. Another one is with Merlot.org. They are a open sourced resource for materials, curriculum, and things like that we were able to point universities to that were needing to gather resources that did not have the curriculum available at their fingertips. So we were very fortunate in that sense. And then really just, relying on our university members and things like that with how we navigated through that. Specifically with CHED and Education USA, the U.S. Embassy Manila, we had a wonderful, we continue to have a wonderful relationship with them into other programming. In fact, out of our continuity of education programming, we were selected for a South by Southwest education talk, which is a very popular world recognized conference here in Austin in the spring. So we're really honored to have that, prestige to be invited there. And it's going to be really on online governance. So we talked about faculty, we talked about students, but what about the universities? What are the policies and procedures around how do you implement this when this wasn't something, that was a common practice? And so what we really did here at Type to help navigate that was we curated an administrative policy playbook that we, curated policies and procedures from all of our Texas universities here and had it in a Google document that we were able to then meet with CHED and kind of preview together with a small focus group, personally selected from CHED and Education USA and some of our most participatory programming students to be able to join that. And we were able to take that online governance handbook and then distribute it out to these 44 universities and then task those universities that were part of our continuity of education programming to then go in and evaluate it and then pull in the decision makers necessary at their university and really start thinking about things. And there were things in there that they didn't think about at all before until it was presented, because you don't know what you don't know. So it was really very, very interesting to have that conversation and keep that energy flowing and, address the needs and meet our participants that were part of this very prestigious program where they were. And that, that's how we continued with our strategies and keeping everything moving forward. We really focused on the discovery of where these universities were, where the faculty was, identifying their needs, and then using our resources as our consortium to go ahead and address them as they arose. And so that proved to be very beneficial. Another thing that we did to help launch everybody forward with flexible learning was we created 2 templates for courses that were kind of plug and play templates for the universities to then go ahead and take and adapt, brand as their own. We had boilerplate language in there that was consistent with what research-based best practices were for online course delivery and instruction, how you keep your students engaged, how do you think about academic integrity, how you think about humanizing your teaching presence with your classroom. And I think that was one of the biggest, workshops and takeaways from our group was, there's a lot of problems with technology. Nobody's going to be perfect, but if you're present, you're doing a good job, and so those were just some of the things that we did here with keeping continuity of learning and all the different strategies moving forward, just listening and observing and addressing those needs as they arose.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. I really hope that the templates that you have been using would also be replicated in other areas and other institutions. Because it seems that it has been working since the start of the pandemic, and really collaborating with different institutions and synergizing everything that you have in order to address the issues that we've been facing. Thank you so much. Dr. Melinda, I know that you've mentioned already that some of the challenges that the Philippines educational system have been facing since the start of the pandemic. What are the other unique challenges that you've seen in the learning strategy, learning problems rather, or issues that we face, and how do we think and how would you address those challenges?
Yes. I have mentioned earlier about the digital divide, the digital
Yes.
exclusion, which is not unique to the Philippines alone. I mean, many countries, especially here in Asia, they've been experiencing that kind of challenge with the shift to online or remote learning. But actually, the first challenge is that when there was this the shift to emergency remote learning, everyone everyone was thinking that it's online. I mean, you have to have access to the internet. So that paradigm shift is necessary such that remote instruction need not just be through the internet alone, because that problem became a major one. I mean, it became a major obstacle. How can we implement online instruction when we know that there's this uneven development of infrastructure, the connectivity in so many areas in the country? There are still many areas in the country that really don't have access to the internet. So that's really a main problem. So that kind of challenge we're in, we have to find the right combination of technology, not just the new or the modern ICTs, but also thinking of the traditional ones, the radio, the print. I mean, these are still technologies. And as long as they will ensure that learning would continue for most, if not all of our students, because we don't know the context of other students, then we'll have to think of those different combinations of technologies. We have to be learner. And that is something that we always emphasize, especially at the start of the pandemic. We have to be learner and learning centered. When we design instruction, when we design our instructional delivery and strategies, we have to think of the context of our learners. So earlier, I think it was Heather who mentioned that the flexible approach to instruction. That means to say that when we say flexible in our own application and concretization of the flexible approach, it means to say that we have to consider the context of the learning, just so that we can ensure that learning would continue for this particular group of learners. So that's the first thing that we have to the first challenge that we have to face at the start of the pandemic. The good thing here is, of course, we know that for many Filipinos, even the young population, they are techie, shall we say? They can use the technology, but for social purposes. But that could be a starting point. Hence, we were able to see even some of our educators, some of our fellow teachers using Facebook. Of course, we have to warn them about the data privacy, etc. But you see, they were able they discovered, our fellow educators discovered that when you are using Facebook for your live lectures, etc., to connect with your students, you are using lesser bandwidth. So it's something that I also learned from our fellow educators, compared to like when you are using Zoom or other platforms to connect with your students for your synchronous session. So there were many things, but that one, in terms of the use of technology, so that we can connect, we can bridge that divide, that distance, the physical or the geographical distance between the teacher and the students. We have to make use of the technology, and finding the technology, the appropriate, relevant, and accessible technology for both the teachers and the students is something that is a unique challenge, I can say, because it will be different for different areas in the country. But what I can say in terms of addressing the challenges, I have mentioned earlier that somehow our even our young population, even the adult population, in fact, our students are even more techy than some of our teachers. So it's just a matter of shifting the use of the different platforms for learning. So that's something, that's a strategy that we also have to teach to our learners, to our teachers especially, and also the partnership with the other stakeholders of education. So I could mention, like, for instance, the Department of Information and Communication Technology. Of course, they have community e-centers, but of course with the with the restriction on mobility, many of our learners could still not access these facilities, which are usually run or manned by our local government units. But as we move forward, and as we think of the flexible learning mode of instruction, this kind of partnerships with the different government agencies, with the different organizations, is something that we have to consider in the design of our instruction when we really want something that is flexible. Of course, there's another unique situation in the Philippines, especially when it comes to the young learners, those who are just starting school, our pre-kinder, the kinder. I mean, I can cite one example when I was observing a nursery doing online class, and there's this teacher. Of course, the teacher was introducing the lesson. It's an English lesson, but the context of the introduction of the lesson is something like this. Suppose you will go shopping with your parents, because they were studying about places, nouns, places, things, etc. So the story of the teacher goes something like this. Suppose you're going shopping with your parents. Where do you want to go? And you know what most of the students, what was the reply of the students? Lazada, Shopee. So this this is the kind of things, the culture, the shopping culture that they were that they have now, this for these young children. So I guess we really have to look at all these things that are happening now, and from there reflect, synthesize the results of our experience, the results of whatever investments we've made, and then from there synthesize and then take them as we design our instruction for the next normal. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. We really have to think about the learners and the receivers of knowledge, and their specific conditions. We have a question here. I think it relates so much to what we have been discussing earlier, and this was mentioned earlier, and how we are, some of the students, and in the context of different institutions, we value social interaction. This question is from Nestor Mesias Banuwag Jr. I have a question talking about the social aspect of learning. Can you suggest or share any effective approach or best practice on how to sustain our existing programs that mold or form our students to become socially engaged or better citizens amidst this current crisis, given that our students, like what Dr. Melinda mentioned, they have no social exposure at all and no community immersion? Thank you very much. So that's a question from Mr. Nestor Banuwag Jr. Thank you so much, sir, for that question. Who would like to answer this first?
I can give it a try. So
Go ahead, Dr.
I mentioned our Cal Poly Pomona Student Innovation Entrepreneurship Leadership Program. So when we deliver the program to international students, we also line up like a team of more than 10 our university, our own Cal Poly Pomona students, just for the exchange of cultural ideas. And for example, yesterday we had this session. So one student asked, how do you learn the engineering? Like, how is your course design? How during pandemic, how do you engage students in the lab work and stuff? And among our student assistants, we had a student from the College of Engineering, and she was able to jump in and share with her peers how here in the United States we try to keep the learning, going during pandemic, and how the professors try to still help the students with lab work. I just want to share this example. So it's not only academically, so international students with our own university students, they also shared their personal life and social life, and so I think it's a very good program to have that kind of engagement to increase the cross-cultural awareness and enhance their global competency.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. Maybe Heather can answer this question as well.
Sure. Thank you so much. And that's a great question, by the way. With how do you deal with that? What are the beauties that has come out of this pandemic with shifting to this flexible learning space? Universities do have the opportunity to connect to students that are out of their immediate geographical location. That is an opportunity to have the cross-cultural student demographic in your classroom, which is wonderful. We were fortunate enough to have a program again with MMSU in the Philippines and our universities here in Texas for a virtual exchange academy pilot. And basically, educational institutions use virtual exchange to cultivate cross-cultural relationships and competencies for their students. So in the face of COVID-19 and the multitude of challenges it poses to universities worldwide, virtual exchange has proven itself as a valuable and sustainable, accessible global learning tool. So it enables students to interdependently learn with their peers in countries that are not theirs, meaningful, facilitated, and collaborated online experiences that are low cost, widely accessible, and scalable. So virtual exchange provides opportunities for underserved students as well to participate in international programs and gain access to the global educational experience. So we have some programming. We can do 4 weeks, we could do 2 weeks, but that is one of the programs that TIKE does. And we are perfectly positioned to do things like that because we have access to 39 plus universities that are interested in doing virtual exchange academies in any discipline: healthcare, energy, entrepreneurship, engineering, business, you name it. It's just really interesting. So we train the faculty on how to coordinate and implement a virtual exchange curriculum and the elements and considerations that you would need to make. And then we would do the breaking down the barriers, talk about cultural intelligence, and then planning that instructional design out to, design a virtual exchange.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. Despite the distance, that shouldn't stop you from learning from other cultures and creating social engagement as well with your other peers and different institutions. How about Dr. Melinda?
Yes, I think both the examples cited by both Lisa and Heather point to the use of technology so that we can still facilitate the interaction, the social aspect of learning for our students. So if I may add, especially in the context of the Philippines, we know that our students, our young generation, they're very much into the social use of media. I mean, the social platform, social media platforms, they're very much into it. So in terms of interaction outside the lesson, we really don't need to do much prodding for them to interact among each other. So like, for instance, in the case of my university, as I have mentioned earlier, we are a fully online university, but that doesn't mean that our students are not interacting among themselves. I mean, outside of our learning management system, outside of the teacher facilitated discussions, they are forming groups through the different social media platforms, and they are interacting among themselves. So the social aspect, if I may also add, 24% of our students are based outside the country. We're present in 60 different locations outside the Philippines, but that did not prevent or does not prevent them from interacting among themselves, especially if it's just to ask how they are doing when it comes to their course requirements. When it comes to the learning outcomes, of course, there are also there's also that need for our students to be working together with their fellow learners. So in this regard, we also use the different collaborative tools, the different social platform, the different learning platforms, so that they can still work even among themselves. I mean, they can choose the platform that they have access to, so that social aspect of learning can still be incorporated into the design of the courses and into the experience, the learning journey of our students. That's very, very important. I mean, we teachers, we should be mindful not only of what's happening inside our classes, but also into the entire learning journey of our students. So that is something that we have to also build within the entire ecosystem, the learning education ecosystem that our university provides to our students. And if I may add, we have different technologies now that we can also integrate into our teaching learning processes. Like we have the the different realities, the immersive technologies, right? We have the mixed reality, augmented reality, etc., virtual, so we can use these different technologies, immersive technologies, so that we can somehow provide our students with a real life like experience when it comes to learning. I mean, we really have to be creative. We really have to maximize the use of these different technologies so that we can ensure that learning would happen as far as our students are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Melinda, for that. We mentioned and we talked about distance learning and how digital technologies can help close the gap. So what are your observations and experiences like in adopting new technologies and digital approaches? Can you share some guides or cautions or tips for educators who are currently transitioning to digital approaches and exploring new ways to facilitate learning for students? Let's start with Dr. Lisa.
Sure. When I talked about our, we quickly changed our international programs to be online. I think, like the technology was really a challenge at the beginning. For example, in the United States, we always use Zoom. But when we talked with our foreign partners, they said we don't use them. Some of them say our country we're not allowed to use Zoom. So we need to quickly adapt to what they what kind of technology they are using. So try to make it work. For example, with mainland China, they normally use the Tencent. That is the way they are using for the virtual learning. So my team quickly learned how to make it work. So, and also just a tip that before any online learning class starts, my team always would do the test run the day before to make sure,
Yes.
It's kind of may sound trivial. It's very important because anything can go wrong when you have 100 students there, virtually, and here what they see is a black screen. So, and also, if I could share, is that I think as Germaine, just you shared, sometimes our professors, faculty members are less kind of technology advanced as our students, so we need to train them. So we had training sessions for them, and also, virtual learning, it's different from in person. So professors could walk around, have this in-person, contact. So we need to be creative and innovative and in coming up with kind of interesting activities to get the students engaged. So I just want to share, a few of, I call that our learning experience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. And I really agree with you. You really have to do a tech run first in case something goes wrong, so you can mitigate those problems. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. How about Dr. Heather? Any tips for your educators who are transitioning to digital approaches?
Sure. My biggest tip is don't be very hard on yourself. One thing at a time. You don't have to be a guru of every technology platform and every app and everything. You don't have to know every fancy thing. Don't lose confidence in yourself. I would suggest, take advantage, like my colleagues said here, in, professional development sessions that your institutions are providing. Join a virtual learning network. There are a lot of them out there on several different platforms. There's tweet, talks. There's stuff on Facebook groups that you can join. We have a community here in our organization, a Facebook group. It's called the TIC Online Global Community, where we have our program alumni from all over the world share their best practices and strategies and what they have done to overcome these challenges and technology tools that they have used. Sometimes universities also do the brown bag lunch professional development sessions, things like that. And just even thinking about to take it another level besides the digital approaches to take, but think about project-based learning.
Mhm.
Think about, like that learner-focused, student-centered curriculum. We call it student-centered curriculum here in the States, but it's a learner-focused curriculum, like my colleagues were mentioning today. And thinking about that, and don't be embarrassed to ask a student for help. If they're a techie student, sometimes that's a little bit of a culture shift to do that, but I wouldn't be, as embarrassed to do that nowadays, with the environment that we're in. But definitely join a virtual learning network or a professional learning network. They're a VLN or a PLN, they're referred to on the internet, and join up in those groups and get some buddies in there and other teachers that are in the same spot as you, and learn from them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. And it's another way to interact with your students, right? If you have questions about specific technologies, that's another way of learning as well, not only for the students, but most especially for the educators as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. How about Dr. Melinda?
Yes. Okay. I think I have two tips specifically. One is for the design of the learning materials. I mean, when we think of teaching, we really have to consider that our students are not there with us in the classroom. So instead of saying that we are the sage on the stage, there's no more stage when we talk of remote instruction. So we have to be the architects, the engineers of learning. We design with all the information, with all the things, the building materials that we can get, especially from the internet. So of course, quality materials, I should emphasize that as well. So let's stop thinking that we teachers are the sage on the stage. Let us be the architects, the engineers for the learning of our students. So that's one. And of course, we have to rethink of assessment. I mean, especially in the context for most educational institutions here in the Philippines, we think of assessment as a one-time, big-time thing at the end of the term, right? Especially for higher education. Assessment is something that you build into the design of your course. It's something that's going on. I mean, it's not just at the end or something like that. So we have to rethink assessment. When we think of authentic learning, then we also have to think of authentic assessment. So we have to reframe our minds when we think of education, when we think of teaching in the remote or distance learning mode. Earlier, Heather mentioned about open educational resources. Yes, and if I may add, there are so many sources, many platforms where we can access these free materials. They are quality materials. UNESCO has this OER Commons.org, so you can also access from K to 12 higher education, different materials, and different organizations also have their own platforms to share. Here in the Philippines, we have DepEd has it. The Department of Education has its OER repository. The Commission on Higher Education has its own repository, the Philippine PHL CHED Connect, wherein many universities contribute so that the materials can be in one platform, and the university teachers and even those learners, the students, can also access it. So if I may also add that the tip on don't be too hard on yourself. I mean, when we go live like this, of course, things can go wrong. So we just have to have a backup. I mean, something that, okay, so what will happen if one of your speakers suddenly get disconnected? So there has to be something. I mean, the moderator can really is playing a major role in terms of really, making sure that there will be no dead air, so something like that. So we just have to be prepared. Let's not be too hard on ourselves. For teachers who are preparing video materials, because we are also training our teachers to prepare their video lectures. It's okay. I mean, it's okay if you, of course, we want quality video materials, but it's okay if you're not really that good looking in your video materials. What is important is the content, the quality of the audio, that you are presenting correct information. So these things, as we go along, I mean, as we go through the whole process, we will be learning, we will continue to improve. But again, what is important now is that we will ensure that learning would continue for our students. Yes, thank you.
Definitely. Thank you, Dr. Melinda. It's really for the students, for our learners. And we, like what you said earlier, the educators are the engineers, the facilitators, and the architect of that learning ecosystem that should serve our students. We have one greetings comment here from Mr. Antonio G. Moran. Greetings from Davao City. We all have
hi,
another...
sir. I know him.
Oh, that's why. Hi, Sir Antonio Moran. We also have greetings from Miss Christine Grace Gapi. Greetings from Romblon State University, from the International Linkages and External Affairs Office. This is also from Engineer Ray Ramos. Hi, everyone. Hi to all of our viewers all the way from Davao and Romblon and from different parts of the globe. Thank you so much. I have another question here for our panelists. We've mentioned this earlier, the need for inclusive learning systems. How do you envision a functioning and inclusive learning system and environment post the pandemic, and even as this pandemic continues? Hopefully not, no? But how do we get there? What are the things and the plans and strategies that we plan to implement and that we have already implemented? Let's start with Dr. Heather.
Thank you so much. So inclusivity can be referred to as many things, right? Is it inclusivity with cultural awareness and, a diverse student population, having awareness there, and how do you address that? Now that you have students outside of your immediate location that are entering into your classroom. So that's something to consider. And then inclusivity as far as like accessibility to things. How do you get on the internet? Is it just only the internet? And we've heard this addressed several times in our talk today already with, you don't have to always be on Zoom. You can use other things that are lower bandwidth. You can, go on Facebook Live. You can go on, all these different other platforms and meet the students really where they are. Another thing that I really would like to urge, universities to look into and faculty to look into is, an inclusivity statement that would be incorporated into their syllabus, into their curriculum, just making sure that there's an awareness that all students matter, all voices are heard, and that you really do take the time to humanize your instruction, being available. When you think about it, when you had your normal classrooms in day-to-day life where students were coming down the hallway, you'd see them, you'd pick up on their body language, you talked about your plans for the evening or what you did for the weekend or things like that. It's a lot of times that doesn't happen. You go straight into a recorded video and you lose the connection with your students. And so to be inclusive, you have to be present. So be present, be aware, and also look into, students that have learning disabilities. There's screen readers, there's all sorts of tools available through several applications, whether you have like a Microsoft computer, there's all kinds of things already built into the systems. You can just go right to certain websites and it'll give you, this is what we're doing for accessibility. This is what we're doing to make sure that, people that have learning disabilities can access the content and things like that. So those are just a few tips that I would recommend to look into. But the best one would be being present, being aware, humanizing your instruction, and working on that inclusivity statement that all students have a voice and all students matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. That was so beautiful. You have to be present all the time in order to ensure inclusivity and make use of what we have in order to continue the learning of our students. How about Dr. Melinda?
Yes. Okay. When we talk of inclusion in learning, then the first thing that would come to mind is openness. Openness, that there is a learning opportunity for everyone who is interested to learn. I mean, no matter what, what subject matter, etc., whatever the context of that particular learner is, then there is that learning opportunity that will be made available for that particular learner. And we're not just talking here of our university social responsibility. We're also talking here of the sustainable development goals. We have to contribute to that. And of course, at the basic foundation of this is everyone's right to education and to learning. So for me, it's making your learning programs really accessible to all. I mean, that means to say that removing the major barriers to learning: cost, right? I mean, access, digital access, etc. So meaning to say, you will be available, your learning programs will be available in different formats, different technologies, etc. So we'll have to make sure of that, so that we can make these learning opportunities available. And of course, I think it was Heather mentioned already about what about those with learning disabilities. Of course, we also have to think of integrating into the design of our courses, into the design of our learning materials, even just the basic features of the universal design for learning. I mean, it's not just the technology that will help, but the design of the learning materials. Like, for instance, in our case, we have many open educational resources. The university has its own platform where these open educational resources can be accessed. And we started integrating even just the basic features of the universal design for learning, so that when you access those with some disabilities, they can still learn the content of this material. So it's removing openness, inclusion. Inclusion is our social responsibility as universities. And it means to say that we look at the different barriers to learning, and as much as possible, remove those barriers to learning and make the learning opportunity available to those who are interested to learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. Dr. Lisa.
um, I think both of my colleagues, they have addressed this issue very well. If I would like to add, it's just first of all, bring the awareness of the importance of collaborative online international learning to your top university administrators. I think their support is very important. If you if you work on a small program, it's okay. If you are thinking about institutional strategies, so you have to bring your top leaders into the conversation, into the picture. So that would support you financially, if there's a personnel need. So also, I just mentioned that we call COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, and I think this is a good way. We bring students to students, faculty to faculty, and my personal experience during the pandemic is that we need to. I think Heather just mentioned, think out of the box. Just learn about, from other people what they're doing, and attend conferences. During pandemic, I attended as many conferences as I can, maybe over 100. So this is how I learn and adapt and see if we can borrow other people's ideas. In terms of inclusivity, I think it is important that we make this all the opportunities not only accessible, but also affordable for all the students, because there are a lot of students still in poverty, and we need to consider that, and also including learning disabilities. And this is just my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. We have a question from Engineer Ray Ramos of RSU ILAO. His question is, how could we really motivate our students to be engaged in free online programs, like different resources online? For example, the COIL program, Coursera, UP Open online learning that augment their learning. How do we engage students to access these resources? Let's start with Dr. Melinda.
Yes, first they have to be aware that there are these learning opportunities for them, and that it is for free. Well, not necessarily, not really free, but because they really have to invest on the internet time, etc. But in terms of course fees, I mean there are no course fees. So, but in terms of the design, what are these things that we are offering? I mean, they have to be targeting specific skills, specific knowledge, so that they will be attractive to certain sectors of the students. I mean, we cannot design for all. There's no such thing. So at the UP Open University, when we design our massive open online courses, there are specific sets of goals, knowledge, and skills that learners are expected to acquire at the end of the course, for instance. So that's the kind of thing that we do. So in somehow that particular group of learners, we could engage them to be part of this free or open online course. So there are, of course, general interests, etc. But the more important thing is for them to know, for them to be aware. And in the process of learning, we have to keep them engaged. We have to keep them engaged by designing the different learning activities, this peer interaction that have to be designed into the course delivery as well, so that they will be engaged, they will be motivated. And towards the end of the course, the output is very concrete in terms of what they will be submitting and what they will be learning. I mean, indicative of what they will be learning. Of course, we are also trying to, we're getting somehow some progress there in terms of really making institutions, employers recognize the certificates of completion acquired from these open online courses. It can add to their credentials. And we have witnessed some of our course completers asking for their certificates immediately because they want to include that in their curriculum. I mean, as a part of their credentials. So we are now seeing a recognition among the employers in terms of these certificates of learning completion, because they are really equivalent to training. I mean, when we design these open courses, they are really like training delivered online. In terms of learning, we are ensuring that when you have the certificate, you have learned something from the program. So those things that we are doing now to really invite or motivate these individuals to be part of our open online programs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. Dr. Heather.
Thank you. That's a great question also. And I think that, backwards design is a good approach when you're putting your curriculum together. We talked about universal design for inclusivity of students, but really taking the backwards design approach to make sure that M is what I want the students to understand and know and be able to do. Do you have identified results? Then, how do I check what they have learned? Determine the assessment, the authentic assessment, the evidence that they're doing. So in an English essay class, you would not do a multiple choice assessment. You would have a different sort of an assessment, right? Just because it's online, you don't get away with that. And then finally, which learning activities will lead students to those desired results? So planning learning experiences and instruction around that. And anytime that you can have a flipped model where you can have the students do things on their own time in an asynchronous format, they can do all the consumption of the reading materials, watching the videos, going on, so whatever there is you're going to have them do, that stuff, they can do that on their own. And then when you meet synchronously, use that time for your discussion or questions or challenges or things that they learned about that they want to know more about and they want to share with their class. So those types of things are strategies to keep your students engaged. Another strategy would be, like I've mentioned before, is the project-based learning. You can have something that addresses, this is an authentic assessment. You have a project-based learning, you have a capstone activity at the end of your class, you build toward that. You have all of your objectives addressed, you have students in groups, you can move those groups around and have students move interchangeably among those groups. You can assign students different roles. You can have them be the lead. You can have somebody be the, secretary. You can have somebody be the lead. You can have somebody be the researcher, somebody be the presenter, and play to their skill set and give them the opportunities to still engage and participate in those types of environments. Another thing that would really keep students attracted to learning, my colleagues here were saying earlier, is the credential aspect of it. And we have found that digital certificates, digital badging that can be shared in their social media platforms or in their professional learning networks have been really, really important and critical, because it's an opportunity for them to share the skills that they have learned in that learning session. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. How about Dr. Lisa? Any additions?
I really love this question. I just mentioned our entrepreneurship leadership program. Actually, when we designed the program, at the end of it's a short-term program the 40-hour session, each student will have to conduct a presentation in a group. They have to form a company and come up with a new product. So they have to sell the product, talking about the marketing analysis, and this is a real kind of introduction to the investors that they would hope they would invest. So at the beginning of the program, we assign them to like small groups, 4 or 5. So during the session, they will have to learn to apply what they learn from the class, and then try to prepare for the final pitch, we call that, or the final presentation. Oh, students were just so excited, and so they, also that the students also learn how to foster their teamwork spirits. And then the U.S. students and our company students and the international students, they work behind the scene. It's really a successful program. I wish I could show you a testimonial of those students. Yeah, we have had a great success in that program. It's just how to, our tip is to design activities, to design the learning experience, to make the students active learners instead of just sitting there passively kind of absorbing knowledge. So this is, I think this is my just one tip to share with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. From Engineer Ray Ramos, he says, thank you very much. Very insightful feedbacks from the speakers. All the best. That's once again from Engineer Ray Ramos of RSU ILAO. All right. So before we end our discussion in our program, I'd like to ask our panelists for any last thoughts or words to share about overcoming learning loss and challenges in the education sector as we continue to face this pandemic. I'll start with Dr. Heather.
Never stop learning. That's my advice. Never stop learning. Reach out to your colleagues, join a group. Never stop learning. You've got to meet your students where they are. Don't assume to move on to the curriculum because that's the curriculum you've always done at that time of year, and just always be out there and connected with your faculty and other colleagues, and staying connected with what's the latest, what's the greatest in that space. And then also really paying attention to where your students are. You don't have to keep moving on. If students aren't getting it, you need to stop and go back and revisit that. Whatever comes later, you can't even get there anyway if they don't have the basic foundation. So, don't hold yourself onto, that we're not advancing where we're supposed to be. Yes, you should be advancing, but advance the students where they are so you can address those learning gaps and those challenges. Another way would be to, like I mentioned earlier, have a lot of asynchronous activities, do a lot of project-based learning, flipped model approach, have them working on things collaboratively, capstone activities like we were mentioning here today. Things like that are a great way to have real application to something that they're supposed to be learning and doing, and then they're going to produce something at the end. That's a great way to keep them engaged, great way to address your learning objectives, great way to get your students talking with other students and having them work together, which of course is a skill in itself. How do you work together? And then how do you work together online? So these are all some suggestions that I have here today for overcoming learning loss and the challenges.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather. Thank you. Dr. Lisa?
Hi. I think we should focus on partnership, international institutional partnership building. I think this is the first step to connect our students, faculty. For example, this time the U.S. Embassy in the Philippines, had this partnership building network. So I was able to connect with more than 6 universities. So we are in the following up, stage to move forward in the kind of collaboration of ideas to collaborate. And then also I mentioned in the beginning, we just have to be very innovative, creative, and be agile and fearless. Try new things. Don't be afraid to fail. This is how we can learn and grow. Talking about the new normal, I personally think that even if one day we say that the pandemic is completely under control, I think this the collaborative online learning model will continue. I think this is very beneficial, and it's not restricted with geographic locations, and so I think we can continue. Grow our international programs, grow international students mobility, or faculty exchange, and in that way, and with all the collaboration with our colleagues.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa. And we have a message here, especially for you from Engineer Ray Ramos. I am interested to network with Dr. Lisa Shue through EdUSA Philippines. Maybe we can get maybe or connect. There you go. For Education USA.
Can I
after there?
Sure.
Go
Can
ahead,
I
Dr.
type
Lisa.
my email? Can I type my email address in the chat box? I don't know if
Maybe
there's
let's connect it. Yeah, we can connect you through Education USA through our colleague Christine Grace Gapi
yeah.
will connect you to Engineer Ray Reyes. Thank
Sure.
you so much,
I am-
Engineer, and Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much. All right. And Dr. Melinda, what are your parting words and last
Yeah,
words? Go ahead.
yeah. I think our two colleagues already mentioned about connecting and collaborating. So I will just add two more other aspects: reflect and share. I mean, as we continue to innovate, as we continue to do our work as educators, we also have to reflect on the good things as well as the bad things. I mean, based on our experience, and synthesize those experiences, and of course share. When the pandemic started, we were able to face the different challenges, especially here in the Philippines, through the sharing. I mean, there's a very high level of sharing among educators here in our country, and I guess those who have so much apprehensions on how they would go about in this mode of instruction, they were able to face it. They were able to hurdle it because of the things that they have heard, shared from other fellow educators. So that's it. Connect, collaborate, reflect, and share. And we will definitely move forward when we share and when we learn not only from our own experiences, but as well as from the experience of our other fellow educators. And of course, resource sharing is something else as well. I mean, we have mentioned the open educational resources, and part of the UNESCO advocacy is for us to also train our teachers on the different levels of competencies when it comes to the use of open educational resources. And that is something that we also advocate. When you develop something, a material, lesson, etc., there are many platforms by which we can share them. Then let us share and make the internet a good resource for quality teaching materials, which can be used by our teachers as well as our students. So I think that's all from my end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Melinda. And thank you so much to all of our panelists here for sharing your wisdom and your experiences, and of course, your time with us today. We do appreciate you being here with us. Once again, thank you, Dr. Lisa Shue, Dr. Heather Farmakis, and Dr. Melinda de la Peña Bandalaria for spending your time with us. And of course, we would also like to thank the Commission on Higher Education for their support for this specific initiative and for this program. Okay, thank you so much, our guests, Dr. Lisa, Dr. Heather, and Dr. Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. We hope to
Thank
see you not just virtually, but very soon. And I hope our viewers would also be interested to take part in different programs that your different institutions have been implementing and to learn more, no? Okay, so once again, thank you to our guests and to the Commission on Higher Education. So we've learned about the challenges that our learning system and different learning institutions have faced during this pandemic. And like what our guest mentioned earlier, we need to connect, collaborate, and share. There are a lot of institutions, a lot of resources available, and all you have to do is really make use of it and initiate and engage other institutions to collaborate in order to continue learning for our students. It's very important to make them feel that they're included, the openness and accessibility to learning. And of course, we always have to think about the journey of our students and to make sure to remove the barriers in the learning systems in order for our students to really continue learning despite this pandemic. Okay, so now let's get to know some allies in promoting accessible education in the Philippines. That's here on The Spotlight. On our spotlight this week is Virtualahan. We introduce to you Virtualahan, a virtual school that helps persons with disabilities and other marginalized sectors to develop skills and become competitive employees and entrepreneurs by harnessing the power of technology. This allows them to be employable even remotely in the comfort of their homes. Aside from PWDs, Virtualahan also provides trainings to indigenous people, out-of-school youth, and solo parents, among others. The scholarship includes training for digital skills such as digital marketing and e-commerce, as well as business English, and customer service, among others. Virtualahan offers job coaching and employment support. To learn more about their program, visit virtualahan.com for a full list of requirements, timeline, and information. Once again, that's virtualahan.com. Now, let's see what else can do for hashtag real impact. Let's find out on What's Next. Coming up are some opportunities that you may grab. The York College of Pennsylvania is now offering its Presidential Research Fellowship. This covers tuition and fees for 4 years worth $22,350 per year. This fellowship allows students to work closely with the professor, design an original research project, and submit the research peer-reviewed journal and present at a national conference. Deadline of applications is on March 1, 2022. Head on over to the Education USA website for more information. That's at https://bit.ly/3x capital MA_H3Y. I think it will be flashed on the screen. So you may take a look at that and go head on over to the Education USA website for more information. Next up, we have the Murray State University. They are also offering scholarships to international students at undergraduate and graduate levels. Deadline of application is on February 1, 2022. Learn more about it through the link flashed on your screen. Next up, the application for the 2023 to 2024 Fulbright Foreign Student Program for Filipinos is now open. This scholarship is offered to Filipinos to study at the graduate level or pursue a non-degree doctoral dissertation research in the U.S. Application will be accepted until April 15, 2022. Visit the link flashed on your screen to apply. Next up, the Philippine American Educational Foundation is looking for an Education USA advisor. Interested applicants would need to submit the following. Number 1, a cover letter addressed to the executive director, an updated resume, and 3 professional references with up-to-date contact information. You may email requirements to Fulbright at fulbright.org.ph by February 10, 2022. Again, you may submit these requirements to Fulbright at fulbright.org.ph. All right. Again, we would like to thank all of our panelists for this episode. And again, thank you to the Commission on Higher Education. And for university partnership needs with U.S. counterparts, please email Manila at educationsusa.org. Again, that's Manila at educationsusa.org. And that's it, chatmates. Thank you for joining us today. Before we go, again, I'd like to thank the Commission on Higher Education for their support in today's program. Thank you so much. And if you have found our chat helpful, then share our live stream so more people can watch our chat. And you may use our hashtags, #ChatUp and #RealTalkRealImpact. And also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Quarantalk Media. And follow us on our Facebook for more updates and exciting programs. You can find us at Quarantalk Media. That's at Quarantalk Media. And we're also on Twitter. Our handle is at Quarantalk Media. I am Germaine Jalandoni de Ruña, and you may connect with me online through my Facebook. It's at Germaine Jalandoni de Ruña. For Twitter, it's at Germaine J de Ruña. And Instagram, it's at Germaine Jalandoni de Ruña. And join me again next month for another Real Talk here on #ChatUp, Real Talk, Real Impact. And as we go, we are leaving you with a video from Education USA. Have a great week, everyone.
A United States education is your gateway
To a great American campus experience.
To study in a country of innovators and entrepreneurs.
To use your curiosity wisely.
to take on challenges,
To think differently.
To have endless opportunities.
to hear new perspectives,
To navigate cultural differences.
To pursue your passions.
To gain real-world experiences.
To learn skills for a changing job market.
To put theory into practice.
To become the kind of professional you want to be.
To thrive in your career.
to give back to your community and to the world.
To be the kind of person that you wouldn't have dreamed to be otherwise.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study.
Come study in the United States.